This is one of my interviews. I'm doing a series of interviews, if you haven't seen one already, on specialists primarily within marketing. And I'm here with Barry Clark today. I know a lot of definitions of marketing would include sales as part of marketing, but I also know quite a few salespeople that say, no, marketing's part of sales. In either case, I would say that both need to work very close together rather than in silos. So I thought it'd be good to have a chat with Barry, who's an expert in the sales field, and even recently written a book on the subject about how marketers can work better with sales and vice versa. So Barry, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Samantha, thanks very much indeed, and very grateful for the invitation to join you here today. My name is Barry Clark. My business is, you can probably see just behind me, called Dunedin Consultancy, and I like to describe myself as the Selling Made Simple business coach. I work with individuals and businesses to help them understand what is stopping them from making enough sales, and more importantly, I share my experience from about 30 years of working in the sales environment, both in B2B and a B2C environment, primarily to help people build a sales culture within their organization, with individuals to help them improve their selling skills, personally help them build their confidence when having a sales conversation with customers. And that's all focused to help them achieve the sales success that everybody knows that they should be deserving and should be delivering, which invariably is at a higher level than they currently are delivering. Would completely agree with your introductory statement there, Samantha. I see so many businesses that lump sales and marketing together, often within the same person. You know, they will recruit for a sales and marketing manager. I tend to think, well, how much better would it be actually if you had a marketing expert and a sales expert working side by side? Because my philosophy is very much that they are two distinctly different but very similar and very, very intertwined disciplines. Marketing, to get the best out of the performance, marketing won't succeed without sales working very closely, and vice versa. Sales won't succeed without a good, strong marketing input behind them as well.
Yeah, and I feel very much the same. And I don't know about your experience, but my experience has been, in some cases, a lot of businesses keep them separate, and there isn't really that, you don't get them working together as they should in order to get the best out of both worlds. Have you found that to be the case?
Oh, indeed, I have. Yeah, probably more often than not would be my answer to that, Samantha. What I'll tend to see, particularly with the businesses that approach me for help and for advice and support, what I'll tend to see is that if they do have separate marketing and sales resources, they're not working closely together. And an awful lot of the businesses that I become involved with to help, I find there's a bit of a silo mentality, because they're not achieving the level of success that they want to be. It's always easier to blame someone else rather than to look on board, take responsibility and ownership and say, you know what, I could be doing better than what we are doing. And I think equally, for sales, marketing is an easy target. For marketing, sales is an easy target. For me, that comes down ultimately to the senior leadership within any organization, because they should be inspiring and motivating and resourcing both areas to get the best outcome. So often I'm sure you and I have had the conversation at some point as well. I'm often approached by frustrated marketers who will come to me and say, I just don't get it. My client has engaged me. We've done what we think is a really good marketing campaign. We've really focused and sharpened the product that delivers exactly what the clients are looking for. We've done a great marketing and advertising campaign to lift the profile so the customer really understands it. We've generated all these fantastic leads for the organization, and then nothing's happened. And the client's screaming at us because they've not achieved the sales. And there's the key thing. There's been a great marketing campaign, but the work hasn't then been done to convert the outputs of the marketing campaign into sales results.
Yeah.
And that's where the two really come together.
Yes, and I found sometimes it's frustrating if the you generate leads, really hot leads that need to be chased up straight away, and they just sit there. Conversely, I've also had heard some marketers just blame sales when they're not really. They don't understand how important profit is at the end of the day. The whole point of what they're doing is to make sales, not just to get click-through rates and all these other figures. They're great, but then you need to move that to the next stage in sales. So from your experience, from a sales point of view, what would you like to see from marketing departments and marketing and agencies as well?
Okay, I think the the key outputs that the sales function, the sales resource needs starts right back at the beginning in terms of, have we got the right product? Have we got a product that the market actually wants, that the market is going to get excited about and will spend money to invest in? Does the market understand what the product's going to do for them? And there's some fairly famous stories out there where you just wonder what had gone on within the product development department, within the marketing department. And I'm thinking of things like the infamous Coca-Cola changing its recipe.
Yeah.
Who in their right mind thought, that's a great idea, we've got this fantastic, amazing product, let's change it? Let's change it and give the market something different. Who in the right mind thought of that? So what the sales department needs from marketing is properly researched product, something that the market is genuinely going to get excited about, the right level of meaningful, workable marketing promotional material, whether that be brochures, whether today it's websites, whether it's working with social media. I think that's often where the disconnect becomes apparent. You may have a brochure that sets unrealistic expectations or makes promises that the sales department then can't fulfill. Equally, salespeople can be notoriously bad for making promises that the product can't fulfill. And those are the real life examples I see when the sales function and the marketing function are not talking to each other. They're not sitting next to each other. They're not, dare I say it, spending time with each other. One of the most powerful exercises I've often seen is when the marketeers join the sales force in the field, and vice versa. When the sales force are joining the marketers to really understand, oh, so is this what the customers are telling you? Is this the feedback you're getting in through social media and through the website? Oh, we didn't understand that. Is this why customers are expecting the product to do X when actually it's meant to be doing Y instead?
Yeah.
Because ultimately, salespeople will be driven to get the sale.
Yeah.
Not always necessarily at a profitable level. They're just usually they will be volume incentivized, and rather than actually thinking we need to sell X volume but at Y price to make this a profitable exercise. And that, to me, the root cause of those challenges tends to be poor or ineffective communication between the two. And I don't particularly blame the marketeers or the salespeople for that. I will challenge and I will hold accountable the senior leadership to say, why have you got these two functions working against each other rather than working in harmony?
Yeah, and sometimes it's in incentivizing. I was in a position once that the sales targets did not align with marketing targets, and therefore they weren't incentivized to follow up marketing leads.
And you've just made me think of a great example from those that don't know me very well. If we've not met in the real 3D world, a lot of my working, corporate background was 30 years working in the hotel and leisure industry. Now, you've just reminded me of a great example of sales and marketing not working together. A particular hotel company that I shan't name and shame, and I'm talking about 20, 25 years ago. Still worked in the habit of we will send out promotional material from head office because we've got this great events calendar for the year. So we'll send you a box of promotional material from Wimbledon. Now, at the particular time, I was running a hotel in deepest Essex in the middle of an industrial estate. We were a Monday to Friday busy hotel with business people in and out, not a leisure resort type place whatsoever. So sending me banners and bunting and posters for strawberries and cream promotions for Wimbledon a couple of days before Wimbledon starts, what good is that?
Yeah. They didn't
What good,
understand their
what
target market.
value are we going to get out of that investment in promotional material? And then, of course, I would be in review meetings afterwards. I'd be in operational management meetings. Well, you didn't do anything with the Wimbledon promotional material. Okay, what do you actually expect me to do in the middle of an industrial estate in Essex, 2 days before Wimbledon, when you send me a load of bumf? And let's be honest, that's what it was, bumf. Why not ask me what kind of promotional activity I could be doing in my marketplace, and let me help to shape and steer the promotional support that you're going to give me? Prime example of what I like to call the tail wagging the dog.
Yes. So there's often I've seen similar things as well, and where, like, at an international level, they've got this idea of what should be pushed out, but on the ground, it's a different story. And it's certainly, I used to spend quite a lot of time when I was client side. Back in the day, I'd spend days on the road with the sales guys. I'd also call them about particular, well, group sent us this product to push. What are your views? What's the feedback from customers? That kind of thing. So you get that feedback. So I guess point one is communicate both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a great believer that communication isn't communication unless it's flowing in both directions. Otherwise, it's just someone else telling me. And if there's no backflow of communication to say, okay, great idea, but I'm not sure that's going to work for me in my business unit, in my location. What if we could do something like this instead? That's the effective marketing campaigns, the effective promotional campaigns, because if you, funnily enough, just last night on TV, there was a new advert for haggis that was on TV last night. McSween's haggis. Now, I've never seen them advertising on TV before, and reflecting back at the time when we saw the advert, I thought, oh, that's quite a cheesy, stereotypically Scottish. It was tartan, accordion music, and all the rest of it. And then I was thinking about it afterwards and thinking, actually, that TV advert was very effective because I noticed it, I remembered it, I remember what the product is. It's immediately got me thinking, oh, it'll be Burns night in a couple of weeks, when I am likely to go and buy a haggis. And it's probably one of the only the 2 or 3 times in a year when I will go out to buy a haggis. I like it. I don't eat it very often. But the funny thing was that, we were watching it last night, and my partner turned around to me and said, well, what's other people going to think about that outside of Scotland? And my immediate thought was, I do hope that advert's not being aired in England or in Wales, and I very, very much doubt it will be. But it got me thinking afterwards, actually, that's quite a clever campaign, because it did catch my attention. And here I am 24 hours later talking about it to you. So it's worked.
It's amazing. I've been speaking to a few TV advertisers. I'm in B2B sector. Normally, TV advertising, so traditionally, is something that you just don't think about because it's too expensive. It's not targeted. The right people won't necessarily see it. But they're so clever now, especially with cable and Sky, where they can put different adverts, different people down the box. They can get really targeted, and it started to. You can get. I mean, marketing is very much about getting to the right message to the right person who's going to make that purchase, ideally at the right time. But then there's that brand awareness that you're talking about, which advertising is often more about the longer term brand awareness. But it's amazing actually how much you can do for a much smaller budget these days. TV advertising. So that's interesting that you noticed that.
Yeah, it was fascinating, and it's when I thought about it afterwards, my immediate reaction was, "Oh, that's a bit cheesy and chintzy."
Yeah.
But then afterwards, I think actually that's quite clever. Here's another really good example at the moment. yeah, a lot of us in business, we tend to try and step up, steer away from controversy, but sometimes creating a bit of controversy can be really good for awareness, for product awareness. Just look at the impact that the cream egg advert is having at the moment with the two guys. We live in a very, very open-minded, liberal, multicultural society these days. References to same-sex couples are all around about us.
Yeah.
But just look at the impact and the coverage, because it's Cadbury's cream egg. Oh my word. But I think it's fantastic. I think it's brilliant. Stirring a bit of controversy, but not taking it too far.
Yes.
And it's certainly got people
yeah.
talking.
And it really depends on the brand as well. Paddy Power, for example, gets away with it really gets away with it, and they know just how far to take it.
Very true.
And it gets them a lot of publicity, not just a lot of free publicity. So sometimes it works, but then we all remember Ratner and his jewelry.
Indeed, yes, indeed. And I guess that's that comes back to the old adage of just listen to that internal voice sometimes. The Gerald Ratner example is a really good story to just remind people of when to stop and when not to go any further. Whenever Gerald Ratner gets mentioned, I'm reminded of a chap that I used to work with many years ago in hotel operations. He was from the north of England, from the northwest, not a Liverpudlian, but had that kind of northwest. He was from Warrington, which is near to Liverpool, and they have quite a similar accent. Now, he had that kind of cheeky chappy personality. He could get away with saying stuff to customers that I just couldn't say. Because I've got a different accent and a different personality, I would never get away with some of the things that he could get away with customers. And I would just stand in awe. And sometimes I'd even go, you know what? You go and talk to them, because you'll get away with it. I'll probably get punched, whereas you'll get away with this. And it's no different in business. It's no different in sales and in marketing.
Absolutely. And it's also doing these things. It's also harnessing people's emotions as well. Cadbury's is particularly good at that, and it's like the gorilla advert. It said very little, but the ROI from that advert was incredible, just because the way it harnessed people's emotions. And associated Cadbury milk with a really happy feeling.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Absolutely. And we're still talking about that commercial, what is it, 10, 15 years after it was run?
Yeah.
Piece of genius, absolute piece of genius.
And
you look at some of the other brands. I mean, Iron Brew can get away with things in adverts that nobody else would ever get away with. Where I think now, because of the history, we're expecting an Iron Brew advert to be a bit edgy, to be controversial, to shock. We're expecting, that's what we're looking for from it. And they very rarely do they disappoint.
And do you think that's something that marketing should work with sales on as well, getting some training across about how emotion is a good way to get that sale, and provide materials that really help them do that?
Absolutely. I think from a couple of perspectives, I mean, that's largely how my business has developed over the last few years, because I without being too controversial, which what we've just been talking about, there is, in a lot of cases, there is a skills gap within the sales world. Life, society, what our customers expect from us has moved on a lot, and that pace of change is really rapid at the moment. And I'll be honest, I do meet a lot of people in the sales world, particularly those who've been doing it for quite some time, that the sales techniques that we used to employ in the 90s and the noughties, they're not appropriate anymore. Society's moved on and they expect different things. And if, I see a lot of people who are still stuck in that features and benefits type of selling, that is, if we were doing this interview 30 years ago, and every textbook that was out in the 1980s and 90s was all about, focus on the features and benefits of your product and what your customer. And you know what? Nobody cares. Today, nobody cares about features and benefits. They just want to know, I need this doing, this is the problem I've got. Oh, your product's going to solve it for me.
Yeah.
If you're in that B2C environment, it's aspirational. It's which of the
Yeah.
emotions are you appealing to? You know, you're going to make somebody more healthy, more wealthy. Are you appealing to their ego and making them feel better than they did beforehand? So the old, and we all still see it. You know, we still see that features and benefits. The you know, the shiny, dare I say it, the shiny suited character, you know, the typical double glazing second-hand car salesman, and there's still quite a lot of them around, I have to say.
And to be fair, there are a lot of people who in marketing, especially B2B, that do that as well.
Yeah.
And instead of starting with and very features over benefits as well, so even worse.
Yeah.
Benefits should definitely come before features. And like you say, people don't care. They want to know how it's going to help them. And you know, sometimes it's sometimes that emotion you've got to hit is fear. Are they so in the world of maintenance, for example, is their plant going to shut down? Are they producing enough stuff, etc.? It's not, and I think a lot of in B2B, I think some people think it's completely different from B2C. And it's not, it's the same principles. It might be, I mean, people wear a different hat when they're at work. They have different concerns. It's different emotions. It's not likely to be just joyous.
No, the drivers are different, but I would say that the differences are quite subtle. You know, ultimately we're all still people, and I think that's one of the key errors that the sales function often overlooks is that, you know, you're not selling to, whether it's an SME, whether it's a big blue chip conglomerate, you're not selling to the organization. You're actually selling to the personality that's right in front of you and it's talking to you.
Yes, their KPIs, key performance indicators, might give you a clue. That's not the whole story. Those are going to probably affect that person who's purchasing or the decision maker.
Absolutely. But, you know, ultimately the procurement person who's in front of you, if they, you know, if you rub them up the wrong way, if they just don't want your personality, as the salesperson, if you haven't built any rapport and built a connection with that individual, you're not going to get the sale. It's not going to happen. You could have the best products in the world, you could offer them the most competitive price in the world, but if you've not built any rapport and connection with the individual, chances are you're not going to get the sale.
I think that's where it comes back to that communication as well, because the sales guys will be the ones finding out what it is that the client or customers, the common thread that's coming up between customers, and can therefore affect what marketing materials. So I know for one campaign I was looking at, the original materials provided were all about maintaining production. And the actual problems on the ground, they weren't purchasing because they didn't feel they had time to sort it out. They were too busy firefighting. They didn't have time to deal with this stuff. So we completely changed the materials to be about how it would save them time. That was the hook. And it was all about, are you wasting man hours? Completely different message. And that was the hook we needed. Because it did both things. We were just focusing on the wrong area.
Yep. I think, you know, a great example of that, a friend and colleague of mine on the networking circuit, who works as a virtual assistant, works as a business support specialist, and her sales message to people in the networking circuit is, pass me the £10 an hour jobs so that you can focus on the £1,000 an hour jobs. And I think that's a fantastic message. You know, where so many of us get bogged down on a day-to-day basis with the important but the small things that eat up lots and lots of time. And I think the same can be said in industry with bigger businesses. So often you get distracted and you get bogged down in the routine and the monotonous day-to-day tasks, and it takes your focus away from the big high earning opportunities. Now, if your product comes along and will smooth out all of those important but mundane, less important tasks, and let the personnel within the business focus on the big money earning, the big profitable tasks, why wouldn't you invest? Why wouldn't you come on board?
Absolutely. Save you money in the long run.
Yeah, yeah. The anyone listening out to this interview, if you're in any doubt, the features and benefits approach to marketing and to selling from the 1980s and the 1990s, it is redundant. It's gone. And what is one of the main reasons that it's gone? Because we all carry these things around with us. I was talking to a colleague recently who is a fellow trainer and business coach. He specializes in the automotive world, and he was telling me how the selling process, the sales process in car sales has completely changed in the last few years. And the reason is because of smartphones, because of access to the internet. In days of old, 10 years ago, if you were buying a new car, you'd walk into a showroom and the salesman would latch onto you and would go through all the features and benefits of the particular car you're looking at. Oh, look at this, it's got sat nav and it's got a sunroof and it's got 4 doors. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. And the thing is, he was telling me recently, they just don't do that anymore. And their whole sort of questioning and qualification process has now evolved into a clarification process, because the customer walking in the door probably knows more about the car they're interested in than the salesman does.
Yeah.
Because they hadn't done the research at home. So the whole process has changed from, I don't need to tell you about the features and benefits because you already know all about it. All I need to do is just answer any queries to reassure you, to confirm the base knowledge that you've already got, and then help you to make the purchase.
And that's another point. Whilst marketing material shouldn't lead with features and benefits, all that technical information, especially something technical like a car or any kind of machinery, anything like that, it should be there, but it's getting it at the right stage.
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
the sales process.
Absolutely.
And too many people lead with that, I think.
Yeah, great. Oh, you're so right there, Samantha. Going back into my old world into the hotel and events industry. Now, I've spent many years working in the wedding industry, right in the thick of it in the past, and now helping to support, particularly from a sales and marketing point of view. Now, the way that the wedding industry promotes and sells its products has completely changed in the last 10 to 15 years. In the old days, research has shown us, if we went back to the sort of mid-90s, early noughties, we would expect anyone that was coming to our venue to have a look at the wedding facilities, we would be one of probably 10 or 12 venues that they would be going around looking at. So it was very much feature and benefit, well, particularly features driven then, and it was those basic uninteresting things of, well, what's your capacity and how many people can I have and what do your menu options look like? It's all online these days. It's all in here.
Yeah.
And research has shown recently, within the last 3 or 4 years, wedding couples are now visiting 2, maximum 3 venues because they've done all the research at home. They've done all the filtering out. They've done all the qualification. They now know, right, I've got these 2, maybe 3 places that it could be either one of these. It could be either one of these 2. Now we'll go and visit and we can make our decision from that. So the marketing process needs to be completely different, because people are looking for all of that raw information to be accessible, but they don't want that front up. They don't want it right in their face.
And I think that's also where marketing automation comes in. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all, where you can start to qualify leads within the website.
Yep.
Depending on their behavior, if you know who they are, if they've responded to an email or what have you, that can really help sales as well. Another thought I had, another question I had was, in your experience, do sales teams and sales people tend to be involved enough in things like rebranding?
Interesting question. My take on it is that no, they're not involved nearly enough. And why do I say that? If you think of most of the clients that you're working with just now, Samantha, the businesses that you've worked with in the past, who is actually spending most time talking to your end user, to your customer? Is it the operations people? Is it the logistics people? Is it the marketing people? Or is it the salespeople? Who's actually talking to them?
Yeah.
It's the salespeople.
Yep.
Yet, how often do the salespeople actually get consulted in terms of we're looking at upgrading the product, or we're looking at a rebranding, or we're looking at a re-imaging? How often does the sales force then, now I'll say that from two sides, how often is the sales force consulted? And equally, how often do the sales force understand the importance of contributing back?
Yeah,
I'll
it's
be the
getting
first to
buy-in as
accept,
well.
sales, many people, many consultants like myself will look at teams within a business and say that the sales force is isolated. And I will go as far as to say a lot of the time the sales force cause that isolation. They like to be very protectionist. That's my clients. You're not talking to them. You're not going to steal my clients off me. They're not always very good at looking at the bigger picture. And I always really encourage sales teams, and particularly the leaders within the sales team, to play their part in the bigger picture. Because actually, it's your salespeople that spend far more time talking to your customers. It's your salespeople who are most likely to hear the grumbles and the groans
Yeah.
when something doesn't quite right, it doesn't quite fit, doesn't quite do what they thought it was going to do. It's the salespeople that are going to hear that first of all. And salespeople can be very guilty of pushing that aside, because we're sales. We're not aftercare. We're not customer care. We're not maintenance. We're sales. I just want the next sale off you. But how more difficult is it going to become to get that next sale?
Mm.
The current product isn't delivering everything that the customer expected of it.
Yeah, I find there's two elements to that. It's a like, and it's basically what you've covered there. It's they have information you don't have that'd be really useful to bring in and same with other departments, actually, customer services in particular. They know information that will help you put together a brand proposition correctly. They also, if you get them involved in doing that, they understand that marketing isn't just doing pretty pictures. We're not the brochure department.
Yep. Yep.
We we actually, it's really important, and brand in particular is so important, and they need to understand what the brand they're representing is and how important that is. So for me, I think I always try and get as much involvement as possible in the brand proposition stage,
Yep.
which is the core of it, and then you get that buy-in, and you get all that extra information that oh, I didn't realize customers had those concerns. Oh,
Absolutely.
wow, our product really helps them there. And
And that's where it's such a, I think it's so important for senior leaders. If you're sensing, if you're seeing those barriers between your sales force, your marketing team, your operations team, you've got to break those barriers down. It's so important. You've got to get, although each team has its own purpose, and they are each individually part of the jigsaw of the bigger picture of the organization. So important to break those silos down, because each discipline, each area is interdependent upon the other. There is absolutely no point in the sales force making a sale, winning a contract, if operations can't deliver it, and then marketing don't understand why the customer is buying. What they're really using the product for, and why they're, why it appeals to them, why they're interested in the product. And that's why things like, I know it seems quite cliched, but team meetings, interdiscipline team meetings, the annual conferences, the away days, the get-togethers, back in the old face-to-face world when we did such things, which, joking aside, it's all the more important now when we're in this constrained online world, that all of these disciplines keep in touch with each other and keep sharing for the common goal, because you just take one of those pieces of the jigsaw away and it will impact all the others as well. And it's somebody wearing the sales hat here. I know how much sales teams can be so protective and poor communicators, because in a lot of way it comes down to the way that they are led, and in terms of the culture within the organization, that also often sales are kind of set up on this pedestal that, they bring in all the revenue, they're really, really important people, they earn all the income. Okay, yes, they do, but they can't do that without marketing behind them. They can't do it without operations behind them. You know what? They can't do it without logistics of actually taking the product off the shelf and boxing it up and sticking it on the delivery lorry. none of it functions in isolation. And I'm a, you know, I counsel and guide the salespeople that I work with that they need to be much more integrated with the rest of the organization and share that feedback. You know, if the customers got moans and groans because the product isn't quite doing what they want it to do, they're in the ideal position to feed that back to marketing, to feed it back to the exec level and say, you know what, this is the feedback we're getting out in the field. The customers are expecting, well, that's not what the product's meant to do. Well, maybe not, but it's what the customers think it's going to do for them. So we've got to disconnect here.
Yeah. So if someone's watching this video who's in a marketing department, client side, and is thinking, how do I, you know, they've not got that leadership support necessarily, but they want to work with sales better. Are there things that you recommend that they can take it upon themselves to do to improve that relationship and improve that performance?
Absolutely. I mean, of course, they could engage with you and with me, Samantha, and together we would absolutely overcome those issues without a doubt. However, in terms of what could I actually do here and now today, I think the most valuable thing that you can do is to spend some time. You know, if you're in the marketing department, spend some time with the salespeople, and equally get them to come and spend some time with you within the marketing department. You know, whilst we started this interview with me saying, in my opinion, they're two separate disciplines. Yes, they are. They're two. I firmly believe they're two separate areas of expertise, but they're very closely intertwined. One can't function without the other. And the first thing that anybody watching this could do tomorrow is open your arms, send an invitation out to even if it's just one of your sales team and say, hey, I'd love to come and spend a day with you. Can I just come and do an on the job and you know, spend a day in your shoes to see what goes on in your life? And hey, as we're doing that, as we're maybe, you know, doing some calls with clients or we're going out to see somebody, you might be able to share with me what you encounter on a day-to-day basis. And then when you've done that, reciprocate, get them to come and spend a day with you in your department and let them see from your side. You know, one of the most successful organizations I worked for over the years had a really strong culture of, they called it back to the floor. And once a year, the senior execs, you know, the MD, the operations director and such, would spend a day on the floor in the hotel. Now, it worked very well, but it could have worked better, because I think there was still a bit of a culture there of, oh, Nick, the MD's coming here next week, get the paintbrush out and get this. The only way you can really see what's going on, and having gone from being that kind of departmental manager to being at the exec level, to being at the director level, you do become detached from the front end of the business. You, with the best will in the world, you know, you don't know the minute detail of what's going on the shop floor, but you can do if you make the effort as the leader to go and find out. And, you know, there are ways to make that back to the floor work. We've all seen, you know, what's the TV show that's called?
Undercover Boss.
Undercover Boss.
My brother was in an episode of that.
They love to, you know, they love to theatricalize it and everything. And you know, the best example of this, the guy that I worked for at Travel Inn, brought the concept of back to the floor from his time at Butlins, and he actually did a TV show. You know, he did the episode Back to the Floor, where he went to a Butlins camp and worked as a cleaner and a housekeeper for the week. The fact that he arrived by helicopter on the first day, I think, kind of gave away the fact that,
right.
I think that kind of gave away the fact that somebody special was coming. I could never quite reconcile the two together, that he went to do a back to the floor for a week, but he arrived by helicopter.
That's showing some real disconnect.
Well, yeah, read into that what you
were. Helicopter.
Read it. I don't think there's many linen porters in a Butlins holiday camp that come to work by helicopter. but the principle, you know, if you can integrate
Yeah.
yourself into your business, and you know, in a way that you're getting the genuine approach, and you can really see what's going on, it's hugely powerful. It is invaluable.
And in very large organizations, that's probably almost easier because people probably don't have a clue who the top bosses are.
No. Well, I think, you know, it probably speaks volumes when certainly when I worked for one of the bigger hotel companies, we had the rogues gallery at the back door. You know, this is the MD's picture, this is the operation director's picture, and I won't beat around the bush. You know, HR would flower it up that, you know, this was for integration, and you know who your colleagues are. Was it hell? It was a, if you see this person, you tell me and you let me. If you see this person sitting in the bar, you come and tell me. You know, that kind of speaks for itself. Why do we have that? Oh, the boss is here. Why do we have that? Why do we have that at all?
And they need to be aware of what the real situation is.
Absolutely. You know, the most, my last employed job, where I was, you know, I was running a multi-million-pound business. I had 150 people employed under me. And part of my daily routine is that I would walk around and try and, you know, spend half an hour just having that quick chat with as many people within the business as I could find. How are you getting on? What's going on? And because I did that on a regular basis, I wasn't the big bad boss, you know, you can't talk to him. You know, if something was bugging you in the workplace, if you're, you know, if I'm expecting you to clean 20 hotel bedrooms today and you don't have a working vacuum cleaner, tell me about it. I want to know. Because you can't do your job. And believe you me, I'll find 150 quid to buy you the vacuum cleaner so that you can clean 20 bedrooms.
Yeah.
But so, you know, so often as a senior leader, you get isolated, you get removed from these kind of things because middle managers think you don't want to know and they're going to get into trouble about it. Actually, I do want to know. I do want to know. And this exactly the same goes for the marketing and the sales function. You know, if this isn't about apportioning blame, but you know, if the sales team are finding it's really difficult to try and support the new marketing campaign that's been put together, you've got to feed that back. Now, sometimes it can be a bit painful, but you've got to feed it back because believe you me, deep down, the marketing department would rather know this isn't quite working actually.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the quicker you know, the quicker you can change it when necessary. And that's so important. When I do marketing plans and campaign plans, the last, well, I say the last step, it's really a circle. The last step is control, or checking what's working, what isn't working, and change if necessary. It's so important.
Very similar to myself, to my own work, Samantha. You know, plan, implement, review, make amendments, make changes, adjustments.
Yeah, very similar. So I think my message to sales guys as well is, please let us know.
Absolutely.
If you've got any issues, let us know. If the customers,
but that's the beauty of that kind of time sharing of the you know, whatever you want to call it, whether it's the, you know, back to the floor, whether it's, you know, that time of actually, can I come and spend half a day or spend a couple hours with you? You know, can I come on a sales call with you? I'd love to experience the challenges that you actually have. And that could be as much as, you know, the sales team is targeted on doing 10 calls in a day, and actually they've got to drive for an hour to get there. They've got to find change in the pocket. You know, first they've got to find somewhere to get parked. When they do get parked, they then got to think, oh, have I got change for the meter? And so often, you know, the others within the operation can overlook and just not understand those challenges that are going on.
Yes, and I have to say, certainly from a marketing perspective, I've learned a lot from spending a day or so with different sales guys. You have different markets and different products that they sell. So, and also working with them on, I think it's important. Quite often, trade shows, marketing will set it all up, and then just send the sales guys. It's so important for someone in marketing to be there to make sure that it all runs smoothly, and B, that they really understand those challenges and really understand how it all works. And
now, I mean, you've touched on a bit of a bugbear of mine there, Samantha, because, you know, I see, particularly back in the hospitality and in the hotel world, I see hotels and leisure companies spending time, money, resource, effort being represented at trade shows, and then they do nothing with it.
Oh my word, yes.
And it is such a bugbear of mine. You've probably heard me, in our conversation, you probably heard me referring to this in the past, but a couple of years ago, the last time that would have been 2019, one of the big Scottish wedding industry trade shows in Glasgow, and I went along as a consumer, but doing a bit of research for my own business.
Yeah.
24 wedding venues that were represented at that exhibition. 21 of them I spoke to, because 3 of them didn't even engage with me. So they've spent thousands of pounds of being in a trade show, and I've gone to speak to them and they don't engage with me. Why? What's going on? 21 that I did speak to. And you could probably remember, because I know we've spoken about this before, have a guess at how many actually followed up the inquiry that I made with them.
Did any?
2. 2 out of 21.
Yeah, it's so common.
2 out of 21 followed. The first one, it took them a week. And the second one, it took them another 10 days after that to follow up my inquiry. So almost 3 weeks to follow up the inquiry.
Yeah.
Half of them wouldn't have been able to follow up the inquiry because they didn't take any details from me. Oh, GDPR, we can't take any details off you.
That's not how GDPR works.
Thank you. I'm at a trade exhibition. I'm wanting to talk to you. And half of the places that I went to, GDPR, we can't take your details. So they're expecting me as the consumer to contact them after I've already contacted them at the trade show.
Yes.
And the reality, why does that happen? Because after the trade show, they've got a whole host of leads to follow up on, but the people who've been at the exhibition, who are probably also the salespeople, they've been at the office for 2 or 3 days at the exhibition. They've got 2 or 3 days of work to catch up on when they get back. Dealing with the inquiries from the trade show isn't the priority.
Yeah, which is again where marketing and sales should work together. I went. There was one place I worked for. They went from coming back with a bunch of leads, give them to marketing to put on the system 2 weeks later, and then not having time to follow up, to having a whole proper process. So the leads went on the system on the day because there was someone from marketing there. They all had their iPads.
Yep.
All went on the system. They would receive automatically going to the system, so that you received an email immediately with any literature they'd requested, all the information.
Thanks for coming to see us. Absolutely.
And it wasn't just the guys on the stand that were expected to follow up. So there were people out in the field who could deal with it immediately. And that's, I would recommend to anyone watching this, please do that. Marketing, get involved in these events.
That's the bit of the process that's also overlooked. Is great. We've spent tens of thousands of pounds being at this exhibition and having a big swanky stand. We've met all these new potential customers. We've gathered some raw data. Now, what are we going to do with it?
Yeah.
Who's going to do that? How are we going to sift the raw data that we've collected? How are we going to prioritize that and speak to the people who actually are genuinely interested in our products and doing business with us? And, it's then making that decision of, well, how much of that sits with the marketing department? At what point do we pass it on to the sales team? And then what are the sales team going to do with it once we pass it on to them?
And having that follow up as well, just checking that the lead, where are the leads, what's happened with them, etc. And having that as part of the process. And again, I think it runs much more smoothly if you have management who incentivize it correctly as well.
Who incentivize it, who get involved with it, and who take ownership. And it's not about being dictatorial and being highly directive, but it is about asking those accountability questions on a frequent basis of, where are we at? What have we done with this data? What are we doing with it? Right? Have we got some obstacles, some barriers in the way? What do we need to do? How do we need to get around these obstacles?
Prioritizing those leads as well, because some of them will be really hot leads. I imagine something like a wedding venue, a wedding exhibition, that's going to be mostly hot leads because people are there for a reason. In my field, it will be varying degrees. But as long as you've got a system to categorize them.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Okay, so brilliant. Thank you for all that information.
It's my pleasure.
Good discussion. Do you have anything that you'd like to plug before we move on?
Well, since you mention it, allow me to shamelessly plug my new book, Selling Made Simple. You know, you've heard us talking for the last 40 minutes or so about my experiences, about my stories. I've distilled my 30 years experience in B2B and B2C selling into what is the first of two books. The second one is on its way shortly. Kind of bringing a lot of my life and experience. Book one is very much about helping those who feel uncomfortable with the selling process, those that as a colleague has described them, the reluctant salespeople, you know, the ones that, oh, I'm not really the salesperson, but I need to be the salesperson. Selling Made Simple will really help open your mind to how to overcome some of those fears and to get you feeling much more confident about talking to your customers and doing business together.
Brilliant. I shall put the links everywhere that I share this video, that and for your information on your website, etc. If you need any help with sales, please do speak to Barry. He is brilliant.
I'd be delighted to have a chat. Samantha, thanks again for the opportunity to spend today with you. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you very much. Right, bye everyone.